Hey credit warriors, and today, yes, I'm going to talk about the potentially massive tax cut for the rich that is sneakily hidden into the HEROS Act. The HEROS Act is that massive piece of coronavirus stimulus legislation that was announced by the Democratic leadership on May 12th. It would cost $3 trillion, which is 90% of the entire US tax revenue for any given year, which we're spending all of anyway, so it would have to be completely funded by borrowing. It is also 1,800 pages long, with the summary alone being 90 pages long. Compare that with the summary of the ABC Act, another piece of stimulus legislation, which is just 2 pages. So I think you can see how easy it would be to just slip a few extra things in there. And there are indeed a lot of unrelated things hidden in this bill. For example, expanding access to financial services for cannabis-related businesses. The bill mentions cannabis 68 times. Now, I don't know, maybe this is important to Nancy Pelosi personally. Or maybe that cannabis legislation is really needed, I don't know. But I know one thing for certain, it's things like this that serve as an obstacle for this bill ever passing the Republican-controlled Senate. Now guys, no matter whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, I try to keep things non-partisan on this channel, just take the piss out of everyone. Same with whether you're rich or poor. Maybe you're rich and watching this to see what a great tax cut you're gonna get. Maybe you're planning on spending that money on a gold-plated toilet, just like Kanye West. Don't worry, I have no hate for you. You go buy that toilet if it makes you happy. I'm just giving you the facts. And if you like the sound of that, please subscribe to my channel, The Credit Shifu, where I share my financial story with you and help you on your own financial path. Anyway, let's actually talk about this tax cut. So the story starts in 2017 when the Trump tax plan, or the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, was passed. Actually, that bill was supposed to originally be called something else.
Let's call it the Tax Cut Bill. And Paul Ryan wouldn't do it.
Anyway, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act limited the deduction for state and local taxes, or the SALT deduction, to $10,000 per year for the years 2018 to 2025. So what that means is previously you could deduct 100% of your state income tax or the state sales tax you paid, as well as 100% of the property taxes you paid against your federal income taxes, meaning you would not pay federal income tax on that portion of income. For example, I pay around $7,000 in property taxes on this house that we're recording in now, and I also paid last year about $5,000 in state income taxes to New Jersey and New York because I spent time in both. So my SALT deduction would be $12,000, but now it's limited to only $10,000, and that would save me around $2,200 or so in taxes. Now, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act did bring in a higher standard deduction and lower tax rates across the board, which offset the negative effects of the lower SALT deduction for most people. But for high earners, and particularly people who own expensive property in high tax states, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act actually turned into a Tax Increase Act. And this drove the uptick in wealthy people leaving those states. Californians moving to Nevada, for example, and I had a friend here in New York who was in the top tax bracket here, about a little over 8%, and he decided to move to Seattle, Washington, where there is no state income tax at all. Now let's give an example of someone earning $1 million a year in New York. They would pay about $300,000 in federal income taxes, but then also pay about $65,000 to the state and $37,000 to the city, which totals about $103,000. Let's round that down to $100,000. Their marginal tax rate is 37%, so the saving for them, if the SALT deduction was unlimited, would be $37,000. But it is limited to $10,000, so they only save $3,700. And imagine if someone was earning $10 million a year. The potential saving for them with the SALT deduction would be about $370,000. And that was just using state income taxes. I didn't even add in their property taxes, which would get them an even larger deduction. Now, even though tax rates across the board were lowered, for example, the top rate was brought down from 39.6% to 37%, rich people living in high tax states in general were still worse off under the new system. And guys, please remember those figures were just an estimate, not CPA certified, just to give you a representation of how much you could potentially save. Now, obviously, it is Democrat states that are losing their wealthy populations because of this rule. Trump probably designed it that way to force those states to lower their local taxes. But so far, they haven't. Can you stop doing that? It really doesn't fit this. Hey! Now, the Democrats tried to get this deduction back last year through the Restoring Tax Fairness for States and Localities Act. Sounds so innocent, doesn't it? But as you can see, it passed the House and went no further. But they can always have another go, right? Yes, and that's exactly what they're doing. Cue the HEROS Act. Skip to page 224, and you will find a section entitled Elimination for 2020 and 2021 of Limitation on the Deduction of State and Local Taxes. Now, normally you have to read the entire section to figure out what it's about, but in this, it kind of sums it up for you in the title. It's eliminating the limit on the deduction, but it's only for the years 2020 and 2021, right? Well, yes, but remember that limit on the SALT deduction was only for the years 2018 to 2025 anyway. So basically, the rich could get a 2-year tax cut, then back on for 3 years, but then there'd be light at the end of the tunnel because in 2026 it goes away anyway. Or perhaps it's just a temporary measure until Joe Biden wins the presidency and they get rid of it permanently. Now, what does this actually mean for the passage of the HEROS Act, which includes another set of $1,200 stimulus checks and an extension on the expanded unemployment insurance, things that average people could really do with right now? Well, sadly, I think it's policies like this hidden within those 1,800 pages, along with the massive aid for states and localities, as well as funding for mail-in voting, that's really going to kill this bill in the Senate. In fact, Senate Republican John Barrasso has already said what Nancy Pelosi is proposing will never pass the Senate. I think that statement is true, and Trump already said yesterday that if the bill ever reaches his desk, it would be, quote, dead on arrival. So the HEROS Act may go the way of the Restoring Tax Fairness for States and Localities Act.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
But I think that many of the proposals in the HEROS Act may make it into a piece of bipartisan legislation that would be voted on around the end of May, early June. So everyone hoping for a second stimulus check, you may still get one. And to all the rich people watching this, you may still get your tax cut and get that 30 grand extra you need to buy 30 of these bricks to build that outdoor fire pit you've always dreamed of. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Leave a comment below with what you think about all this, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.